Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachanam Pangam Langyate Girim Yat Kripatamaham Vande Shri Gurunena Karanam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So we'll resume our discussion from fifth canto, fifth chapter, verse 17. The chapter is essentially talking about, or this section of the chapter rather, is talking about the instructions given by Lord Rishabdev to his sons, who are essentially proxying for us. So the instruction given by Rishabdev to us. So in the instructions, we see that the Lord builds the cadence towards bhakti. Right? This section talks about the qualifications of the leader. That the leader is one who ultimately leads others to the path of bhakti. So the question now comes that what if somebody does not do this? What if somebody is a leader and does not do this? So that is answered in this 17th verse. Okay, so Kashtam swayam tadabhigya vipascheda avedyayam antareva tamanam drishva punastam sangrakubuddhivim prayojaye utapadagam yathandam. If someone is ignorant and addicted to the path of samsara, how can one who is actually learned, merciful, and advanced in spiritual knowledge engage him in fruitive activities and thus further entangle him in material existence? If a blind man is walking down the wrong path, how can a gentleman allow him to continue on his way to danger? How can he approve this method? No wise or kind man can allow this. Right? So, what does a qualified leader do when he sees that the persons that he is leading are addicted to karmakand? So the question is mostly rhetorical, which is answered by Rishabdev himself. He's saying that if a person was to encourage them to proceed on the path of karmakand, it is like guiding a blind man on the wrong path. Right? So, or allowing a blind man to continue to walk on the wrong path. So the person is blind because he does not know, really speaking, the process of bhakti. But the leader knows. He sees that the person is walking down the wrong path. He sees that this person is heading towards the blind well of material existence. So he cannot allow for it. So if a person does allow, so the implication is that if a teacher does guide them on the path, any path other than bhakti, he should be considered as not having. So Rishabdev gives three qualities, and he says that one should understand the person does not have one or more of these three qualities. Tat abhigya. Tat abhigya means the person is not spiritually advanced himself, which means he is not qualified to be a leader. Then vipaschit. Vipaschit means learned scholar. So the person does not know himself. And sagrana. Or maybe if the person is spiritually advanced, maybe if the person knows, but he is not very merciful. Sagrana means being very merciful. So the ideal qualities of the leader is that the person should be tattavigya, that he should be himself following that path of bhakti. Not that he himself is following some other path and he's encouraging others to follow the path of bhakti. He should be himself following the path of bhakti to be becoming spiritually advanced. Vipaschit. He should himself know the conclusions of the Vedas. And sagrana, that not being satisfied, have being properly situated himself, the person should take, out of mercy, the person should take risks to guide the other person along this path of bhakti. Okay, verse 18. Gurur nasasyat swajano nasasyat pita nasa swajanani nasasya evam natatsya napatischa sasya namo chayedya samupeta mrityum. Prem Kishore Prabhu, can you read the translation?
Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you.
One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod.
So the previous verse noted that a real teacher does not lead his students away from the path of bhakti. Now, if a person happens to be one who does not have this ability because of lacking one or more of the three qualities, like the person himself is not practicing bhakti, the person lacks knowledge, person lacks mercy. So Rishabh is saying is, then he should not take on, he gives 6 positions over here, he should not take any one of these 6 positions in which a person is naturally leading other persons. Because in these 6 positions, whether it is a guru, pita, pati, janani, or deva, the person should not be, the person is naturally a spiritual master. Right? So one should not take on these positions. Now, it means that, as we see in the scriptures, that when personalities are advanced, they prepare themselves before they take this position. Like before they become parents, then they undergo purification themselves for 2 reasons: that they have a qualified offspring and they themselves are qualified to lead that offspring. Same thing for becoming a guru. So, and maybe we can collectively answer this. So, based on your understanding, name a personality that rejected his guru.
Bali Maharaj.
Bali Maharaj, very good. So Bali Maharaj rejected Shukracharya because he felt that Shukracharya was not qualified to lead him in the path of bhakti, even though Shukracharya, he was vipaschit, right? He was definitely a learned scholar, but tatavigya, not very spiritually advanced. So Bali Maharaj rejects him. Second is swajana. Swajana means, swajan means my own family. Any example?
Arjuna before hearing Bhagavad Gita?
No, Arjuna was always rejecting his family. I mean, Yeah, different reasons. Not really. Any case, yeah.
I didn't understand, bro, your question.
So like Bali Maharaj is an example of one who rejected his guru because the guru was not leading to the path of bhakti. Do we have an example of a personality that rejected his own family member because it was an impediment to the path of bhakti?
Oh, our own Srila Prabhupada.
Okay, good. I was looking from the scripture perspective. So we have in Ramayana, we have Vibhishan rejecting Ravan. Ravan was the elder brother of Vibhishan. Swajana also has a position, elder brother has a position of Guru. Vibhishan openly rejects him and takes shelter of Lord Ram. Okay, so second situation. Third is, do we have a situation of one rejecting his father for the same reason?
Prahlad.
Prahlad Maharaj, very good. So Prahlad Maharaj rejected Hiranyakashipu. Do we have Janani, where somebody rejected his mother for this reason?
Bharata?
Rejected whom?
Kaikai.
Okay, yeah. So there are different Bharat. There's a Bharat over here also. So yes, Bharat Maharaj rejects Kaikai because she was leading away from Lord Ram. Do we have an example of one who rejects Devam, a demigod, considering the demigod to be an obstacle to the path of bhakti?
Indra.
Indra, very good. So who rejected Indra?
Krishna.
Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, but Khatvanga, Maharaj Khatvanga. So if you remember the past time that when Maharaj Khatvanga had fought for a very, very long time for the demigods, and then at the end of the battle, Indra offers him a benediction. And Khatvanga asked how much time I have. He said, you have a moment that is left. And he said, you can have any benediction that I can give you. And Khatvanga says, no, thank you. Don't want any benediction. And then he goes and he focuses on the personality of Godhead, right? Do we have an example of wives rejecting their husbands because of this?
Wives of the Brahmanas.
Very good. Wives of
Krishna
the
Lila.
Brahmanas, right? So in the Krishna Lila, we see that the Dvija Patnis, they rejected their husbands who were too addicted to Karmkand. And when Krishna sends the Gopas to get some food, they chastise them and send them away. And then the same Gopas, they go to the wives, and the wives said, to hell with, they actually said, to hell with them and their yagya. They take everything and they go and they hurriedly go to Krishna. So Guru, Swajana, Pita, Janani, Daivam, Pati. Right? These 6 cases we see that have naturally leadership positions. And one way or the other, we may be in one or more of these positions. Now, the rejection does not have to be as drastic as it is shown over here. The rejection could also be more subtle. Guru is a special case that, Guru, one cannot be ambivalent towards the Guru, because taking the position of a disciple means following the instructions of the spiritual master with full faith. So you can't have ambivalence there. But you're born to a father and mother, right? So you don't have a choice. And if they don't happen to be conducive to Krishna consciousness, so rejection does not have to be as drastic as Bharat Maharaj declaring that he does not have a mother, or Prahlad Maharaj praying to Hiranyakashipu, praying to Narasimhadev to take away Hiranyakashipu. It can be more internal. The rejection can be that one does not take instructions from them, does not act upon their mentality. So one internally develops certain certain protection against these situations. The Prabhupada says that ordinarily the spiritual master, husband, father, mother, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. Here Rishabdev forbids it. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release the dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple or a father takes charge of his sons. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. Okay, so this is the last verse of the instructions of Rishabdev in terms of the quality of a leader. Okay, so we'll move on to verse 19. Idam shariram mamadur vibhavyam sattvam hime hridayam yatra dharma prasthe krato me yadadharmara ato himam rishabham prahurarya.
My transcendental body, Satchidananda Vigraha, looks exactly like a human form, but it is not a material human body. It is inconceivable. I am not forced by nature to accept a particular type of body. I take on a body by my own sweet will. My heart is also spiritual, and I always think of the welfare of my devotees. Therefore, within my heart can be found the process of devotional service, which is meant for the devotees. Far from my heart have I abandoned irreligion, adharma, and non-devotional activities. They do not appeal to me. Due to all these transcendental qualities, people generally pray to me as Rishabhadev, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the best of all living entities.
So the previous set of verses, Lord Rishabdev put a lot of focus on Bhakti Marg, which essentially means that worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now the sons of Rishabdev may inquire that who is that Lord? Who is that personality that you are recommending to worship? Who is that leader that we should follow? Right? Because 2 points were made. The supremacy of bhakti and the qualities of a leader. So for both, the sons may ask this question: who is the Lord and who is the leader that needs to be followed? So in response to this question, Rishabdev says, he says that I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead who should be worshipped. And Bharat is the leader who should be followed. Right? So he's answering both these questions. And these two verses, this and next verse, he will establish this clearly. So the sons might say, but you are our father. We can understand you being our father, our guru, but you're standing right in front of us, just like us, talking to us. So Rishabdev says, very difficult to understand my body because it may appear, but it is not material. So it may appear to be material, but it is not material. So he is disambiguating that implicit doubt that just because Rishabdev is like a person, right? Essentially, we see that he has two hands, leg. He was born from Maharaj Nabi and Meru Devi. So everything points to him being one of the innumerable jivas. But Rishabdev said there is a difference, that my body may appear to be material, but it is actually Sachitananda Vigraha, that it is actually made of knowledge and bliss. Externally, it may appear to be made of the Panch Mahabhutas, earth, water, fire, air, ether, etc. But difficult to understand that it is not. So one can easily understand the material body. So one can see the body and say that yes, it is made of this Panchabhutas, but it is difficult to understand that when the Lord is appearing in the same body, it is completely spiritual. So Rishabdev is saying that my body may appear material, but it is not. My mind may appear with material, but he says the difference is that in my mind exists where there is bhakti. That my mind will exist where there is bhakti, which meaning that essentially that bhakti is the essence of his mind. The Rishabdev uses he. He means certainly for added emphasis on bhakti yoga. Right. So he says certainly the existence of the Supreme Lord is only dharma, is only bhakti yoga. So in 9.468, Lord Vishnu says to Durvasha Muni, Sadhavor Hidayam Mayam. So this is when Durvasha Muni had offended Amrish Maharaj and he was running here and there for shelter. Then he goes to Lord Vishnu. And the Lord Vishnu then he says, Sadhavayo Hridayam Mayam, which means the pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotee. Right. So when the Lord says that in my heart, he says mind, but it's being used interchangeably, that in my mind there is only bhakti, then he's alluding to that quality of the Lord. That in the heart of the Lord, there is the pure devotee. And in the heart of the pure devotee, there is the Lord. So, what about those who are not devotees? Rishabdev states that which is contrary to bhakti exists behind him, far away. Right? So, which means that in his mind only exists the devotees. The non-devotees are not there in his mind. Now, they are all under the protection of the Lord. But here, the relationship is more that of love. Now, remember, Rishabdev is giving all this to identify the unique characteristics of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Right? He's saying, I am the Lord, and these are my unique characteristics. That my body may appear material, but it is fully spiritual. In my heart, there is only bhakti. And that which is not bhakti is far away from me. And he says, because of this, I am called Rishabdev. Rishabdev literally means the best of all. Now, the Lord is the best of all because he is the Lord. But here, he's saying that because I have only devotion and devotees, For that reason, I am called the best of all. Right? So the glorification of Bhakti and Bhakta continues here. Right? So the Lord is glorifying them to the extent that he is saying that because of this, I am called the best of all. Because of this, I am called God. I am called the Supreme Personality of Godhead because I only have Bhakti and Bhakta. Right? So this is a wonderful, inspiring verse when the Lord Himself is predicating His. We see very often that the devotee's existence is predicated on the Lord. Devotee thinks of no one but the Lord and Matchit Matgat Prana, Bodhayantas Parasparam. So the existence of the devotee is predicated on the Lord. But here we see that out of humility, the Lord is predicating His existence. That I am the Lord because I only have devotion and devotees in my heart. So Prabhupada says that there are three things. There is Sevya, Seva, and Sevak. So Sevya is the person who is receiving the service. Seva is the actual service. And the Sevak is the person who is performing service. All three of them are completely spiritual in perfection in the spiritual world. So that is why they are called absolute. Then he says Prabhupada says there is no tinge of material contamination there, being completely transcendental to the material conception. Lord Rishabh says that his heart is composed of dharma. And dharma is explained in Bhagavad Gita as Sarvadharma Pratyaje Maham Ekam Sharanam Braja. In this spiritual world, every living entity is surrendered to the Supreme Lord and is completely on the spiritual platform. Although there are servitors, the served and the service, all are spiritual and variegated. At the present moment, due to material conception, everything is durvibhavya. Everything is inconceivable. Now, point of discussion would be when Prabhupada says that all three of them are absolute, Sevya, Seva, and Sevak, which is an interesting point. Absolute means that their existence is not predicated on anything else. So one might say, how can you say that the devotee is absolute? Because a devotee cannot exist without devotion and the object of devotion, which is the Lord. And you can put for each of the three, you can ask this question. And this becomes so when we did the Chaturshloki of Bhagavatam, this was discussed in very details, how each of these three are absolute. How the Lord is absolute. Like sometimes say that the people say that the only reason Lord exists is because there is somebody worshipping Him. If nobody worships, then there is no Lord. And sometimes the logicians make this point. So the existence of the Lord is predicated on the conception of the worshipper. And this hypothesis is disambiguated in the Chaturshloki, that the Lord exists before the creation, during the creation, and after the creation. Which means regardless of whether there is somebody worshipping Him, whether there is a worshipper or not, the Lord exists. Same point, it can be applied to Bhakti. Devotion exists with or without the Lord and the devotee. And the devotee exists with and without the Lord and the process of Bhakti. It's the intrinsic quality. Okay, moving on to verse 20. Tasmad bhavanto hridayena jataha sarve mahisham sham mamum sanabham aklishta buddhya bharatam bhajadvam sushurushanam tad bharanam prajana.
My dear boys, you are all born of my heart, which is the seat of all spiritual qualities. Therefore, you should not be like materialistic and unwise men. You should accept your eldest brother, Bharata, who is exalted in devotional service. If you engage yourself in Bharata's service, your service to him will include my service, and you will rule the citizens automatically.
So there were two questions that were implicitly asked. Who is the Lord to worship and who is the leader to follow? Previous verse answered the first question, that the Lord to be worshipped is Rishabdev, or more precisely, Krishna, non-different. This verse answers the question, who is the leader to be followed? So here he says, you should accept your eldest brother, Bharat, as the leader. So Vishwanath Chakravartipad, he uses he does that often, an imputed conversation to elaborate on some of the more subtle aspects of the verses. So the conversation begins with the sons asking Rishabdev, who is the leader that we should follow? Rishabdev saying, follow your elder brother, Bharat. The son says, why should we follow Bharat? Right? So Rishabdev says, because you are born from my chest, Hridayana, right? And thus you are known as Aurashya. You are my sons. So previously Rishabdev had noted that his heart was the seat of dharma. And as Prabhupada had said, dharma in this case is Bhagavad Dharma, devotional service, right? So he's saying that my heart is the seat of bhakti. You are born from my heart, so you are embodiments of dharma or bhakti. So therefore you should do that which is proper by the codes of dharma or bhakti. The Prabhupada says that Rishabdev's heart was always uncontaminated and spiritual. Consequently, all his sons born from the heart of Rishabdev were spiritually inclined. Nonetheless, Rishabdev suggested that his eldest brother was superior and he advised the others to serve him. So, it is relatively easy to ask somebody to worship the Lord, but it is more difficult to ask to worship the devotee of the Lord. Now, especially in this case, where the person they are asking to follow, being asked to follow, is a peer, is a brother. He may be the eldest brother, but he's still the brother nevertheless. Right? In Ramayana, Shatrughan, so people ask that why was Shatrughan named Shatrughan? Because in the entire Ramayana, we don't see him. Shatrughan means killer of Shatru, killer of enemies. But Shatrughan is actually the most passive of the four brothers. He barely speaks in Ramayana. There is only one demon that he kills in Ramayana. Right? Does anybody know the name of the demon he kills? Only one demon he kills in the entire Ramayana.
Lavanasura.
Very good. The only demon he kills is Lavanasur, and what does he establish after killing Lavanasur? What is the city?
Mathura.
Very good. So people ask that compared to Ram and Lakshman, they're killing millions of Shatrus. Why is Shatrughan given that name? And the understanding is he's given that name because he actually killed the biggest Shatru, biggest enemy, which is false ego. So there is Lord Ram right next to him, but he serves Bharat. So instead of serving the Lord, he's completely dedicated to serving the devotee of the Lord. Bharat is dedicated to serving the Lord. Now somebody might say, okay, you are serving the Lord, I'll also serve the Lord. Right? Bharat and Shatrughan, they are almost peers. And Bharat was born a few hours ahead of Shatrughan, almost peers. But Shatrughan, he's fixed in his service to Bharat. Even when Bharat is being vilified, even when Bharat is being shamed for no fault, whatever it is, but Bharat was one of the most disliked personalities by the people around him, because they assumed that it was because of his ambition his mother acted, which was not the truth. Shatrughan never, he never said, okay, now I'm also rejecting Bharat, I'm going to serve Lord Ram. Right? So that is the biggest enemy that one can conquer. And that's why he is known as Shatrughan. So here, Rishabdev, he's also making sure that these 99 sons of his, they don't get caught up in that illusion of false ego, that I'll worship the Lord, but not the devotee. So this kind of desire for superiority, even as a servant, that's a material contamination. Right? I was hearing one lecture, and the Swami was making this point. Radha Govind Maharaj. He was making this point that when we are listening to all these leelas, in our mind we are thinking that we will dance with Krishna as one of the gopis, or we'll play with Krishna as one of the gopas, or we will be chastising Krishna as one of his parents. Now, they are there to attract our mind to that. But if we mature in bhakti, then we should know that that is a form of envy. Because the position of Krishna's parents is taken by Yashoda and Nand Baba, by Devaki and Vasudeva. The position of the consorts of Krishna is taken, friends of Krishna is taken. When we say that we will become that, we are saying that we are as good or better than them. That Yashoda Ma is not a good mother to Krishna, I will become a better mother to Krishna. Right? So it is, we are carrying our material conception into the spiritual realm. We are also carrying this conception that I should be number one. So because of the influence of bhakti, maybe we don't want to become the Lord, but we want to become the Lord's number one devotee. Whereas real humility is that we become Das Anu Das, Anu Das. Right? So in an advanced stage, one should not consider oneself to have been taking those positions, but taking a position of serving somebody who's serving one other person in that position to serve Krishna. Right? So that's why Rishabdev is saying that don't be envious. Because he said, therefore, you should not be like materialistic and envious man. That is their mentality. Out of envy, do not reject the service of your brother. So now the sons might say, going on with the conversation, that you just said in the previous, in verse 18, two verses ago, you just said that one should not worship Pita, Swajana, Janani, etc. Right? He said, don't worship father, brother, guru, etc. Now you are asking us to worship a brother. So Rishabdev says that I am not asking you to worship him because he is your brother. I am asking you to worship him because he is the best of devotees. Right. So what he says is, I asked you to reject a brother who does not guide you on the path of bhakti. But in this verse, we say that he says that you should worship brother who is exalted in devotional service. Right. So that is the reason Rishabdev says, I'm asking you to follow Bharat. The Prabhupada comments on this that Mahisam Paduraj Rajabhisheka. One has to learn to serve the Mahiyan. Mahiyan means those who are spiritually advanced. Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimakte. By serving the Mahat, the exalted devotee, one's path to liberation is open. Okay. So now the sons say that, okay, we accept, but we still have one problem. He's our brother. Maybe he's the elder brother, but he's our brother. He's a peer. He's our equal. How can we worship? So Rishabdev responds saying that you are considering him as equal to you because of a material vision. This body, these relationships, they're all material. And because of that contamination, you may consider himself to be equal. But worship with your intelligence. What does the intelligence tells? That he's not the body, he's the soul. I am not the body, I am the soul. He's spiritually advanced. So then I need to worship. Right? So do not use a material vision. Worship him with your intelligence. So then the sons, they again object. They say that we worship you because you are our Father and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So materially you are our Father, and spiritually you are the personality of Godhead. So we worship you. Then we worship Narad and other sages because they are the cause of bhakti. And because we are princes, so they're pointing to themselves, we are princes, we should protect the citizens. So the objection here is that Bharat is neither our father nor the personality of Godhead, nor is he a guru. So Narad and sages, they're classified as those who are Guru Pradhan, that they are offering, their gurus who are offering bhakti. Right. Now, they're also saying that we have our duty also, which is we need to protect the citizens. So anybody that we worship should help us in executing that duty. So Rishabdev concludes the verse by saying that if you worship Bharat, all of it will be included. In your worship to Bharat, my worship is included. Right? So he's saying that by worshipping a devotee, the worship of the Lord is included. Not only is the worship of the Lord included, the worship of all the sages is included. Not only is that included, but everything material is included. So protection of the citizens has two aspects. One is to protect the citizens as Jana, and the second is to protect the citizens as Jivas. Right? So Jana means that they are the population, make sure there is no crime, that they have sufficient grains, etc. And as Jiva, make sure that they are making advancement on the path of spiritual. So that will be also included. And Rishabh is saying, this is my desire. Right? So glorification of the worship of Guru, of a devotee, and also Rishabh very expertly addresses common misconceptions. I'll worship the Lord, but not as devotee. Right? Why? Because of ego. Right? I'll worship the Lord because He's the Lord. I'll worship the advanced sages because they give bhakti, but this person is my peer, which is actually the most difficult thing to do. Like sometimes when devotees join the movement at the same time or similar time, and one of them makes more rapid advancement, it's very difficult for the other person to take shelter or not to feel envious, because he may have seen the person in the new bhakta mode. And then now suddenly the person is sitting on the Vyasthan and giving classes. Recently, I forget the details, but there was recently a devotee who accepted sannyas. I think also sannyas, or maybe also initiating guru, I forget, but definitely sannyas. And it was very encouraging for me that one of the devotees in our temple, he sent this email. Very, very happy. He was saying that this person and I, we joined in Mayapur at the same time. That we were living in the Brahmacharya ashram together. And I'm so happy to see now this other person, he's a pujari in the temple. Right? So, a very strongly practicing devotee, but he's a grasta, he's a pujari, I mean, he's doing his own thing. And the other person is now a Swami. I think he's also an initiating guru. So one might feel some level of competitiveness or envy, but I was very happy to see his mood was a lot of glorification. Oh, he was right from the beginning. He said a long word right from the beginning. He was very much there, and he was inspiring to me. Continues to inspire to me. That's the mood of real Bhakti.
Bhakti Prem Swami Prabhu.
Bhakti Prem Swami. Okay.
Yeah, from Ujjain. He was a disciple of Bhakti Chara Swami. Sannyas.
Okay. You know more. Yeah, you have a better memory than I do. Thank you, Prabhu. So Prabhupada in the purport, he also notes the importance of devotees being installed as rulers, right? Because Rishabdev here is glorifying Bharat Maharaj, and Bharat Maharaj will become the emperor after Rishabdev. Rishabdev himself was the emperor. Bharat Maharaj will become the emperor. So Prabhupada catches on to that mood and says that that in order to protect dharma, the Lord always wants the ruler of the earth to be a devotee. Therefore, everything goes on nicely for the benefit of everyone. And then he says, what happens when the devotees do not rule? He says, when the demons rule, everything becomes chaotic, which is what is happening right now. So it's kind of interesting that Prabhupada, this is a theme that Prabhupada consistently puts forward. And at one point in the 70s, Prabhupada had actually I go to the Potomac Temple in the DC area, which is the head of politics. So Prabhupada had actually incorporated a political party by the name of the party was In God We Trust. So he had incorporated a political party, and the devotees were there in the party. There was somebody who ran for the mayor, somebody ran for different political positions. They all lost. They didn't win any election. But they were beginning to basically step in the direction. So they were dressing as in non-devotee clothes. Still, they would have tilaks, but they were dressing as in suits and coats and ties, and they were canvassing, etc. And then at some point, Prabhupada stopped it because then he realized that politics is at the opposite spectrum of devotion. Everything that you should not do in bhakti, you have to do in politics. And perhaps in this I'm speculating, perhaps even the people that the devotees, but they're not strong enough to maintain. It's difficult to maintain a devotional, even when you go to a work environment, there because of the confluence of different modes, one becomes bewildered. Politics is a normal professional environment, and then you times that a million in a negative way, and that's what politics is. So he didn't probably he wanted to safeguard the devotees, so then he stopped the party there. But it was always a desire. Bhakti Vinod Thakur says that I'll wait for a time when the judges will have a Vaishnav tilak on their forehead. And I've heard more than one devotees share this, that Prabhupada's desires always come true. They're just separated by time. So he says this movement will last for 10,000 years. We're just in the first 50 years. So a lot of time for us to see or maybe we won't be there to see it, but maybe we'll see from a different place. But for Prabhupada's desire to fructify. Okay, let me pause over here and see if there is any discussion.
Hare Krishna. Just a clarification on this verse which we just spoke. One cannot estimate one's level of bhakti, right? That bhakti is only known to Krishna. This is only like my understanding, the clarification from you. Who we interact, it's like devotees or Vaishnavas, they are the one who hold the ticket for our spiritual progress. Right? This is also well said by even Guru Maharaj several times, or several other Maharajas. So this verse especially solidifies that saying. Is that your understanding?
Okay, I guess you have a two-part question. First, you said is one can't estimate one's
Level of
bhakti, and the second is with respect to following. I guess the question is that how do you ascertain that the person you want to follow is more advanced than you are when you don't know how advanced you yourself are?
No, I'm not questioning that. My only thing is the understanding. Basically, it is we have to digest or understand that every Vaishnava or devotee has the final control of how we interact with them. That's what they will be having the ticket for our spiritual growth, rather than like we only looking for spiritual master's approval or the senior leader's approval or Krishna's thing. We need to respect how we interact with our own peers and our own other Vaishnavas and devotees.
Yeah. Well said. I think Bhakti Tirth Maharaj makes this point in one of his books, The Beggar's Seal. He says that we should treat every interaction with other devotees as if our spiritual life depends on it.
Yeah.
And he does not define what does the other devotee mean. Is it a guru, or whether it's a person who's recently started chanting. Now, of course, the interaction. So if you have to unfold this, yes, we have to view every interaction as if our spiritual life depended on it. But does not mean that interaction means that you take shelter of the person. In some cases, the interaction means that you give shelter to the person, but then you give it with a gravity that your spiritual life depends on it. Right? So regardless of the relative positions and how you're interacting with the person, but the underlying instruction is that you take it with that commensurate gravity, that my entire future spiritual life depends on it. Okay. So yes, so good point.
Prabhu, something very basic question. this comes up many times. What is there a difference between a non-devotee and a Vaishnava, like a non-Vaishnava? Are they synonymous in terms, or is there a nuances between the two?
Yeah, you're right. It comes up very often. And there are both explanations that are given that there are different situations. I mean, there are different people. So one who is connected to Krishna as a devotee, one who is not connected to Krishna is not a devotee. Right? And how deep that connection is, that would basically, I think it feeds to the previous question, that would basically feed into determine the nature of the interaction. That if the person has a deep connection to Krishna, then we serve the person by rendering actual means service, taking instructions. If the connection is just starting, then we serve the person by guiding the person. But regardless, whether the person is simply coming to the temple or he's in the position of a sannyasi, we should treat those interactions as extremely sacrosanct. And in a way, it becomes second nature to us. As we spend more and more years practicing bhakti, it becomes second nature. If we introspect, it's almost like we become schizophrenic, like we have developed twin personalities. When we go to the temple, we are, everybody who comes to the temple, we know is one way or the other connected to Krishna. So we are polite, we are, we'll say, Prabhu, please take my line, please take my place in the line. People cut the prasadam line, you just smile and say, fine, it's okay, they are children or they are new. So you constantly, it's a whole different persona that you are putting there, which is not an artificial persona. It's just a manifestation of this conception that we need to be constantly mood of service with devotees. Now, the same person in a professional environment is different. Not that they become like demoniac and start cursing out everybody, but we see that there is a subtle difference between it. Still, the mode, the mode of being equanimous, the mode of being respectful is there, but you actually have to see yourself in those two situations to appreciate the nuances the verse is talking about that you are asking about. Externally, it may look like one is discriminating against one and other, but actually it's not, because both of them go up, but one goes up more than the other. Our interaction with those who are not devotees, it also goes up. Like we don't get angry, we don't indulge in gossip, we don't indulge in envy, that goes up. But also along with this, our interaction with devotees also go up. Okay.
Prabhu, just think about when you were talking about like cutting the line. For example, I heard if in Mumbai or in India, you had to get onto a bus or a train. If you had to give your, okay, go, you will never get on the bus or the train.
Yeah. Especially if you are in, I don't know anybody here is from Bombay. Bombay, if you cut the line, they probably will kill you over there. They're so particular about maintaining the sanctity of lines. I don't know how the temples work there. I've been there, but never, just for a day to visit. But they are very, very particular about maintaining the line. In Delhi, it's different. Everybody cuts the line and they keep fighting with one another. But in Bombay, they don't. But in the temples, it's completely different. People are standing in the lines peacefully, and somebody suddenly comes up, goes to the head of the line, takes a plate, takes prasadam. Nobody, everybody's smiling. Nobody looks at it like, or they may be more good-naturedly. They may be saying, "Oh, this Prabhu looks like he's in a hurry." Right? We see the difference.
Thank you.
Also, it leads talking on that on a lighter note, Prabhu, like when serving prasad, right? When a devotee comes, a non-devotee comes, it will be a lot more interaction, more, oh, you need more kind of a thing. When a non-devotee comes, I don't know, this is only within our congregation, looks like.
Yeah, you get slightly bigger portions. I've seen that. Okay, moving on to the next.
I have one question, Prabhu, like, sorry for that. When we do any offense with any Vaishnavas or devotees, there is a certain standard, right? Until that Vaishnava forgives various ways, right? We have certain steps. But at the same time, knowingly or unknowingly, we do offenses with a non-devotees as well, any relation. Call it to the point what Nand Kumar Prabhu, like what he said, Nand Gopal Prabhu said is, who is not connected to Krishna, right? So how to take that when we make offense? We know inside we do offenses, and we can follow the same steps even to non-devotees, but they don't accept the same way. You see the point? Whether it is at work or anywhere else. This is like a practical question, I think.
So, so Rampat Maharaj has this very elaborate process that he talks about how to deal with offenses, right? I forget the 4 or the 5 R's that you recognize, you regret, you rectify, you are reinstated. I think I'm missing an R somewhere in between. Ultimately, you're reinstated there. And then he said this is applicable to everyone. Right? The fact that you recognize, you regret, you rectify, and then get reinstated, this is applicable everywhere. In the context of when it is applied to devotees, then because the relationship is around Krishna, then these R's are centered around Krishna. Because we had this discussion in an earlier session that there is a difference between aparadh and impiety. So the example of Rupa Goswami seemingly laughing at Vaishnav because his body was deformed, it's not a sinful activity, but it's Vaishnava aparadh and Guru Avigya. So at work, your boss asks you to do something, you don't do it. It's not sinful. Nothing is going to happen to you. I mean, maybe you don't get, the boss becomes upset, but from the cycle of karma, nothing happens to you. But Guru Avigya, your Guru asks you to do something and you don't do it, very serious consequences. So the relationship is different and the activities and consequences are different. So recognizing that difference, but still the R's remain the same. That in a devotee context, the rectification, Maharaj says, what's the rectification? You beg for forgiveness, and if the person does not forgive, then you serve the person. If the person does not take your service, you serve the person from afar. Right? That's there. In the non-devotee setting, what is the rectification? That which was considered to be impious, you don't do that anymore. Maybe you were bad-mouthing the person, you don't bad-mouth the person anymore. Maybe you were undermining the person, you don't undermine. So it's the mood, the cycle is the same, the mood is the same, but how it actually gets instantiated, that's different. But I think the short answer to the question is yes, it needs to be done everywhere. It's not just that we are focusing on the devotees and insulting the non-devotees. It should be done everywhere. But the way we do it needs to be predicated on the nature of the relationship.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Nice question. Okay, verse 21, 22. Bhuteshu viruddhya udutam maye sarishprasateshu sabodhanishta tato manushya pramatastatopi gandharva siddha vibudam vaye deva surebhyo magavat pradhana dakshadayo brahma sutastutesham bhavaha paraha suthavirinchavirya somat paroham dvijadeva deva.
Of the two energies manifest, spirit and dull matter, being processing living force, vegetables, grass, trees, and plants are superior to dull matter, that is, stone, earth, etc. Superior to non-moving plants and vegetables are worms and snakes, which can move. Superior to worms and snakes are animals that have developed intelligence. Superior to animals are human beings, and superior to human beings are ghosts, because they have no material bodies. Superior to ghosts are the Gandharvas, and superior to them are the Siddhas. Superior to the Siddhas are the Kinnaras, and superior to them are the Asuras. Superior to the Asuras are the demigods, and of the demigods, Indra, the king of heaven, is supreme. Superior to Indra are the direct sons of Lord Brahma, sons like King Daksha, and supreme among Brahma's sons is Lord Shiva. Since Lord Shiva is the son of Lord Brahma, Brahma is considered superior, but Brahma is also subordinate to me, the supreme personality of Godhead. Because I am inclined to the Brahmanas are best of all.
So, previous verse, Lord Rishabdev, he recommended that you serve your elder brother, Bharat, because, and then he gives the qualities, right? Because he's a devotee, advanced, so you worship Bharat. Now, someone might ask that what if Bharat is, I don't, they have, those 99 brothers, they have access to Bharat. I don't have access to Bharat. And you're saying that two areas of perfection, one is worship me and the other is worship my devotee. And you said that devotee is Bharat. And then you said that the worship of the devotee is actually better, because in the worship of the devotee is the worship of the Lord included, and any other material aspirations are included. So if we do not have access to the personality of Bharat, who do we worship? Right. So in 5 verses, what Rishabdev says that worship the Brahmanas. Right. So first, so just like he established the superlative position of Bharat, now Lord Rishabdev will establish the superlative position of the Brahmanas, that they are the best amongst the people. Now, he will also make this point here that the Brahmanas are so exalted that even Bharat Maharaj should worship the Brahmanas. Right? So you can see how he's building the case. You worship Bharat Maharaj, but Bharat Maharaj is so exalted that he worships the Brahmanas. So if Bharat Maharaj is not there, then worship the Brahmanas. Who are the Brahmanas? That he will talk about. But here he is in a more analytical way establishing the superiority of the Brahmanas. So in these 2 verses, he talks about 16 kinds of entities. And then he establishes a gradation. So he says right at the bottom is inanimate objects because they don't have a soul. Higher than the inanimate objects are the immovable living entities. And these are plants and vegetables. Higher than them are the movable living entities. And these are the worms and the snakes who crawl on their belly. Higher than the movable living entities are the animals. Higher than the animals are the humans. Higher than the humans are the pramathas. The pramathas are the ghosts and the spirits. Why are they higher? Because they do not have a gross body. Right? They just have a subtle body. So they are not constrained by the material laws of nature. Right? They can travel at the speed of thought, and they're not constrained within a room, etc. So higher than the humans are the pramathas. Higher than the pramathas are the gandharvas. Higher than the gandharvas are the siddhas. Higher than the siddhas are the kinnaras. Higher than the kinnaras are the asuras. Higher than the asuras are the devas. Higher than the devas is Indra, because he is the head of the devas and he lives a very long time. He lives for the duration of Manu. Then higher than Indra is Daksha. Higher than Daksha is Lord Shiva. Higher than Lord Shiva is Lord Brahma. And higher than Brahma is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the reason he's giving this is that he's saying that I am at the top of the food chain. And he's doing it analytically. Right? He could have said I'm at the top, and that could have been sufficient, but he's doing it analytically. He's saying that higher than this is this, higher than this is this, and I am at the top. Now, having established his own superiority, what does Rishabdev says? Because I am inclined to the Brahmanas, they are the best of all. So essentially what he's saying is, higher than me are the Brahmanas. So I am the highest, but even higher than me are the Brahmanas. Therefore, you should worship me. Prabhupada says the Lord is worshipped as Brahmanaya Devaya. The Lord is very fond of devotees of Brahmanas. So Prabhupada notes over here that these Brahmanas, the term Brahmana is being used synonymously with Bhakta. They are not caste Brahmanas. He said this does not refer to the so-called caste Brahmanas, but to qualified Brahmanas. And these are not the Dvijas or the Vipras. These are the Bhaktas. And the qualities of the Brahmanas. So because they are being given such an exalted position, the Rishabdev wants to make sure that there is no ambiguity. So in the next verse, he will talk about the 8 qualities that manifested in the Brahmanas. Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad, when he is commenting on this verse, he says that here it is noted that Brahma is given a higher position than Shiva, because Brahma is the father of Shiva. Right? We know that from the forehead of Brahma appears Lord Shiva. So he says that's why Brahma is given a higher position than Shiva. And then he says, but actually Shiva is superior to Brahma because he is a Vaishnava and he has superior powers. And actually he says Shiva is higher. Now, in the purport to this, Srila Prabhupada makes a very interesting observation, wherein he acknowledges, this is, as far as I know, this is the only place that he acknowledges that life comes from matter. Right? Because if you look at this chain, at the bottom is inanimate object, then plants and vegetables, and worms and snakes, animals, humans. So in this way, this is the chain of evolution. And because Rishabdev says it starts from matter, Prabhupada accepts the fact that life comes from matter. Now, this is contrary to his typical assertion, right? Where Prabhupada has his book, life comes from life. I think something like that. He has this book, wherein over and over again he says life cannot come from matter, spirit cannot come from matter. Matter is dead, it is jada, spirit is sentient, not possible, right? And he does that to refute the conventional theory of evolution, the Darwinian theory, where it is postulated that matter comes together, combines, and then somehow it becomes conscious, right? So to basically refute that, Prabhupada says evolution is spiritual evolution, that from one body to another. But then he further explains. So this is an interesting argument that we can place when having debates with others on this point. He said that if you accept the fact that life comes from matter, then you will also accept the fact that matter comes from Lord. So eventually, life comes from life. The matter may be a conduit, a via medium. Right? So then again, he reverts back to his original assertion. Right? So in the purport, Prabhupada says that in this word, the evolutionary process is indirectly mentioned. The modern theory that life evolves from matter is to some extent supported in this verse because it is stated, Bhuteshu Viruddhaya. That is, the living entities evolve from vegetable, grass, plants, and trees which are superior to dull matter. In other words, matter also has the potency to manifest living entities in the forms of vegetable. In this sense, life comes from matter. But matter also comes out of life. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Aham sarvasya prabho matata sarvam pravartate. I am the source of all spiritual and material world. Everything emanates from me. There are two energies, material and spiritual, and both originally come from Krishna. Krishna is the supreme living being. Although it may be said that the material world is a living force generated from matter, it must be admitted that originally matter is generated from the spiritual living beings. Nitya Nityanam, Chetana Chetanam. The conclusion is that everything, both material and spiritual, is generated from the supreme being. And so here he completes the argument. So one may not have to completely deny the theory of evolution, but one may have to complete the theory of evolution. That what you're seeing is the penultimate step. You're not seeing the first step, you're seeing only the second step. And you may see that life coming from matter, but you do not see that the matter comes from life. Srila Prabhupada, he also quotes Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhi Leela, this is chapter 19, where the 8 gradations are given, slightly different. There begins with non-moving, jada, which is plants, moving, then humans. Higher than the humans are the humans who accept the Vedic principles. Right? The other humans are known as Dvijapada Pashu. Like they're humans, but they're animals. And then the human life accepts when the humans accept Vedic principles. Then higher than them are those who follow the Vedic principles. Like there's one who will accept the Vedas. They may not follow it. But the higher than them are those who accept the Vedic principles. And at the beginning, this acceptance is Karmakand. Higher than the Karmakandis is the Gyanis. Higher than the Gyanis is the liberated Gyani. And the highest of all is the devotee. Right? And then we have studied in the third canto, yet another gradation, right? This appears in instructions of Kapila Dev, third canto, chapter 29, verses 28 to 33. Another similar but slightly different gradation. Slightly different gradations appear in the third canto, 10th chapter. Maitri Muni gives that gradation. Okay, we'll do one more verse and then we'll stop, or if there's any discussion. Na brahmane stulya bhutamanyat pashyami viprakimataha paramtu yasmin rabi prahutam shraddhayaham Ashnami kamam nantathagnihotre.
O respectful Brahmanas, as far as I am concerned, no one is equal or superior to the Brahmanas in this world. I do not find anyone comparable to them. When people know my motive, after performing rituals according to the Vedic principles, they offer food to me with faith and love through the mouth of a Brahmana. When food is thus offered unto me, I eat it with full satisfaction. Indeed, I derive more pleasure from food offered in that way than from the food offered in the sacrificial path.
So the Lord is addressing his sons as Vipra. Right? He says, Pashami Viprakimata Paramtu. Right? He's saying that you are Brahmins, even though they are Kshatriyas, but he's saying you are Brahmins, and then also glorifying. He's saying that you are, O respectful Brahmanas. There is no one superior to the Brahmanas in this world, for obvious reasons. The Lord is the most superior, and he's considering the superior Brahmins to be more superior. So there's nobody superior to the Brahmana. I do not find anybody comparable to them. Right? If there is nobody superior, is there somebody equal to them? No. Nobody equal to them, nobody superior to them. Right? So in order to establish his very, very so far the Lord has been speaking theoretically. I consider the Brahmanas to be worshipable by me, to be my superior. Now he's giving a practical example. How is it that the Lord is giving the Brahmanas this exalted position? He says that the Lord says that I eat through two ways. What are the two ways by which the Lord eats? Through the Yajna Agni, through the sacrificial fire, and through the mouth of the Brahmanas. And then says of the two, he says, I prefer to eat from the mouth of the Brahmanas. Right? So all the Vedas, they glorify Yajna. That perform Yajna, when you say Swaha, you're offering to Lord Vishnu, and the Lord eats the oblations given through Yajna. But the Lord is also eating directly from the mouth of the Brahmanas. And he says that is higher. So that's a practical way in which the Lord is demonstrating the exalted position he's giving to the Brahmanas. That is why any sacrifice is considered to be incomplete without the distribution of prasadam. Right? There is this verse, I'm forgetting the Sanskrit of the verse, but where it says that without the proper chanting of the mantras, without giving proper remuneration, without faith, and without the distribution of prasadam, the yajnas are considered to be incomplete. Yeah, I think somebody can look up the verse for me. It'd be good. But why? Because that is the perfection of the yajna. Yeah, unless you distribute prasadam, the Lord, he may have eaten through the fire, but he has still not been satisfied. When the Brahmanas are fed, then they are satisfied. In Govardhan Leela, we see that. Like when Krishna is giving instructions on, he says, don't worship Indra. Worship Govardhan and worship the Brahmanas. Worship Govardhan because Govardhan is providing for all our needs, and worship the Brahmanas because the Lord eats through the Brahmanas. Prabhupada writes in the purport that according to the Vedic system, after the sacrificial ceremony, the Brahmanas are invited to eat the remnants of the offered food. So remnants of what is offered to the Lord, right? Prasadam. When the Brahmanas eat the food, it is to be considered directly eaten by the Supreme Lord. Thus, no one can be compared to qualified Brahmanas. The perfection of evolution is to be situated on the Brahmanical platform. A civilization not based on Brahmanical culture or guided by Brahman is certainly a condemned civilization. Right? And Prabhupada then expands on what does a condemned civilization look like. He talks about 7 attributes. That such a civilization is based on sense gratification and material desires. Such a civilization, there is no respect for the Brahmanical culture. It is based on ugra karma, intense material endeavor for industries, mines, cities. What is the 4th attribute? That the government, in order to provide for this ugra karma, they heavily tax the citizen. So essentially, the government is the biggest thief. Then the 5th is that people do not perform yagyas. Why? Because they're caught in this ugra karma. 2 aspects of the ugra karma Prabhupada says. One is working hard to make a lot of money, and then working hard to pay the taxes that you have to pay on the money that you have earned. So coming in or going out, you have to work hard. They have no time for yagyas. 6th point he says is the cycle of yagya, which leads to the falling of rain, is impeded. Right now, the biggest thing is climate change. So we see the predictions in the Gita materializing right and or beginning to materialize. They say it'll get worse and worse, but you can see how sometimes it rains too much, sometimes it does not rain, too hot, too cold. Cycle of yagya is stopped. Right, and 7th point he makes is that the opposite of this is that when one follows the Vedic path, then everyone, man or animal, are happy and satisfied. Right? Srila Prabhupada also notes in the Nectar of Devotion that when Krishna says that the Brahmanas represent my mouth, mouth has 2 functions. One eats through the mouth and one speaks through the mouth. So Prabhupada makes the point the Brahmanas not only eat on behalf of the Lord, they also speak on behalf of the Lord. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there's any discussion.
One question, Prabhu. How is a ghost superior to human? Because I understood that ghosts, they don't have a body, but how do they do spiritual progress without a human body?
They are not spiritually superior. They are more evolved. They're materially more evolved. Right? For you to go from one place to another, you have to travel with your gross body. They can travel across planets. They can't, if the material body is cut, it bleeds. The ghosts, they don't cut and bleed. So they have more powers than the material body. That way they are superior. The evolution is not really talking about spiritual enhancement. It's more of material evolution.
Okay.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. 2 things somehow I'm not able to fully understand. One was that previous section, the Savior, Sevaka, and Seva, how they're all absolute in nature. You spoke about it. I mean, we've always heard about Bhakti being independent, so that seems okay. And the Supreme Lord is also absolute and independent. But the Sevaka, the devotee, is also spoken of in that same sentence as being absolute. Of course, there's one sentence in the purport that says these 3 items are completely spiritual, and therefore the spiritual world is called absolute. So I guess the question is, are they, so this sentence, the sevaka, is only pertains to only the pure devotees, correct? Is that right? Not to any other devotee.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Only the pure devotees are considered absolute in that sense because they are spiritual completely.
Yes, the way I understood it is that when we talk about the sevak being absolute, it is referring to the intrinsic quality of the soul. That it's the nature of the soul to be a devotee. Whether the soul in a liberated stage is engaging in it or in a conditioned stage is not engaging in it, that quality of the soul does not change. It's not that in a conditioned stage the soul stops being a devotee. It may get covered, right? So it's not predicated on the fact that the process of bhakti is being followed or the relationship with the Lord is being followed. That quality is intrinsic to the soul.
The other question was how the verse number, the latest verse, 21, 22, Prabhupada also writes in that purport, right? Like the modern theory that life evolves from matter is to some extent supported in this verse. That's also like a little hard to grasp because you all along hear this life comes from life. And how we say that, there has to be a presence of a soul for the body, like, the example of a glove assuming the shape because there is a hand within it. Otherwise, there is no form to that glove. It's just matter. Similarly, the soul, when it enters the body, that is when it animates. So that is how we hear it. And so this is also very mind-boggling in one sense. But when I was reading that purport, also I was thinking of the Annad Bhavanti Bhutani. So because of Anna, the material body is nourished, and then Parjanyad Anna Sambhavaha. So it seems like the subtle gives rise to the gross, maybe perhaps, but I don't know. Again, this is another point that just stood out for me, and it's hard to wrap up. But yeah, you spoke about it. Sorry. Please go ahead.
Sorry. So it is, and I think you covered both the aspects that Prabhupada uses to explain it. One is like he says that plants grow or the bodies grow. He talks about the plants, but extrapolated to bodies. So plants grow because they absorb the soil and water, right? So material nutrients they absorb and they grow. And from that one can understand that from matter is coming life. So the matter is being absorbed and it's creating life, right? That's one aspect that he explains. And the second is, of course, what he explains is that because matter comes from matter comes from Krishna. So even if one assumes that life is coming from matter, because matter is coming from life, ultimately life is coming from life. It does not necessarily contradict the position that Prabhupada and scriptures take that life comes from life. I think it's just a matter of what is the scope of your perspective. That if one is simply looking at a plant absorbing nutrients and growing, one can understand that life is coming from matter, right? If one simply sees a man and woman coming together and producing a child, then one may consider the fact that life is coming from matter. But at the same time, what Prabhupada says that while one may understand in this perspective, it's somewhat justified, but ultimately, even if you were to look at it from that perspective, you would still be forced to accept the fact that matter is coming from Krishna. So it's one of those. That's why I said this is a good way to debate. That if somebody says, the plant is growing out of soil, or children are being produced by parents with material bodies coming together, then one can say, fine, I accept what you're saying. But then you also have to accept the fact that matter is coming from Krishna. And there's a very, I think Dutta Prabhu talks about it, that how to understand that matter is coming from Krishna, right? He mentions that assuming it's coming from him. I'm not 100% sure. I read it somewhere. So he talks about how the nature of matter is chaos. Nature of entropy is that by nature it goes to the highest level of entropy. Entropy is the measurement of chaos. But then he says that there is so much of order in matter. There are all these laws of matter that are being excruciatingly followed. That he says that how if the constant of gravitation, it changes by 1 billionth, then the whole universe will collapse. So then one can understand that matter is coming from the Lord, because it's not the nature of matter to follow rules and regulations, but the fact that it is following rules and regulations means that somebody is imposing on top of it. Right? One way to understand it. Okay, so a little over time. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Arsana. Go ahead.
No, I just said I just thank you for that. While you were saying it, a thought that came to me, just a little tangential perhaps, but linked to this is that I've been reading. I homeschool my children, so we read creation stories from different cultures too, like Iran, Mesopotamia and Egypt and all of that. And one thing they all start off like, or even Norse from that Scandinavian countries, is that it starts off with chaos. It starts off like fire and ice, or like dark and light. It starts off with matter, and it kind of, the modern theory of evolution kind of goes from there. From chaos comes something, and from them comes two human beings, and from them comes all this creation. But the biggest missing piece is that matter ultimately comes from Krishna, the Supreme Lord. That I think is like the core piece that I don't see it. Perhaps because it's also, they try to make it secular, but I think that's what differentiates our Vaishnava theology from that.
Yeah. I agree with you. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll end over here. Thank you very much. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hai Gaur Premanand. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.